Hello, everyone. Hope you're well on this Sunday afternoon. I'm going to give you my thoughts on the Tucker Carlson Putin interview. And also, I will, towards the end of it, I will share with you a couple of comments that I saw because I watched the version that was on YouTube, and it allowed the whole interview in its entirety. So I watched. It was over 2 hours, so it took me a little while to get through it. So thanks for bearing with me. But I want to give you my thoughts on it, and I also highlighted a couple of comments that I noticed on the video that I thought were resonated with me, that helped sum it up, so to speak. I also have a very good verse I will share, a good passage that I will share towards the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. But first, we know it's Super Bowl Sunday. I know not everybody is into football, and I'm not the biggest NFL fan, y'all. I'm really not. If you listen to me a lot, you know I've said that before. However, I will probably keep up with the Super Bowl later today, and I will be pulling for the 49ers. Now, I'm not traditionally a 49er fan. I'm a long-suffering Atlanta Falcons fan, over the years. But I'm going to pull for the 49ers for two reasons. The Chiefs have been there a lot lately, and I'm kind of tired of them. And I mean, nothing against them. But, and also the quarterback for the 49ers, Brock Purdy, Purdy. Like the guy, he's open about his faith. And so I like that. I respect it. So he's a good player too. So I'll probably keep up with it. Mrs. Dawg is going to be watching the Puppy Bowl. And I will probably watch some of that too as well. The Puppy Bowl, y'all. They play at the same time the Super Bowl is going. All right, into it here. All right, the interview. I'm glad that Tucker did this. I mean, it was a risk for sure, And Putin, I get the feeling, just an overall thing, I get the feeling that he was pretty sincere on this stuff, and he really wanted to be heard. Uh, there's some times in it where you would think, and I think Tucker thought that he was filibustering a question, but I believe in what Tucker had said afterwards is that not so much a filibustering technique, but he was just taking his time getting to the point. He's going to get around to his point. He's just going to give you some history too. And that's how he started the interview, where Tucker kind of asked him about why he really invaded Ukraine. And Putin goes into a long history. It was over 30 minutes at the beginning of the video about how he recounts all the history of Russia, basically, and how he finally comes to the point to where he believes and makes the case that Ukraine really is and should be a part of Russia, the outskirts of Russia, but he believes that they really are part of them, and at some point they will be reunited. He does hold on to that. He also he also makes a point that NATO keeps the big reason he keeps hammering home, though, that he invaded is because, especially after the fall of the Soviet Union, and I guess that's 1991, that NATO had promised not to expand NATO towards the east, toward his borders, and they have broken that promise, which is true, and they keep expanding NATO to his border, right, literally to the border of Russia. So cannot he cannot let that go. So, and that's another big reason. And he lays it out very detailed, very, very well, you know. So, so that's something to consider also. But he goes into long discussions about it, and he speaks very well. This guy's very smart, of course. He's a shrewd dude now, no doubt about it. He's shrewd. Um, he also talks about how when Clinton was president, he asked Clinton, he said, if I decide if Russia wants to join NATO, what would be the response? And he said Clinton was kind of open to it and was like, that's very interesting. I'll get back to you on that. Let us think about that. And then later on, he came back and said no. But Clinton said, no, that's not going to be a possibility. But he thought Clinton personally liked the idea. I thought that was very interesting. he definitely alludes several times to that as an example and other examples of why he thinks that no matter who's president, there are decision makers, the elites, the power base, the power groups that really make the decisions, and the president, doesn't really make a lot of the major decisions. So he's probably right. He's pretty right on that, I believe. Actually, he sums a lot of stuff up pretty correctly. He's knows his history. He knows a lot about the United States, how it works. He's done plenty of his homework. He used to be a KGB agent, back in the day. And, so he has a lot of knowledge. He claims that he proposed working together with NATO several times. He said he proposed working together with NATO as far as developing missile defense system, and he was rebuffed by NATO and said, "No, we're going to go along with our missile defense system, and you can do whatever you want to do." So he said he told him at that point, "Well, in that case, I'm going to have to take countermeasures, of course, because you're doing this all right at our doorstep." And that's when they started the research and development of the hypersonic missiles. And he alluded to that. He's like, we are a leader right now in the world as far as hypersonic missile technology, and we have them, and basically you can't stop them. And I believe he's right there. I believe he's probably correct there. So that was interesting. Again, he's saying, NATO promised not to expand to the east, and you keep doing it. You know, and then Tucker keeps asking him about, well, why don't you just pick up the phone and talk to Biden and end this war in Ukraine? They talked a lot about the war in Ukraine, of course. And he says, I have nothing really. I have nothing, why would I call? I have nothing to say to Biden. Basically, he knows, and your leaders know the deal. We've told them plenty of times in talks and through the proper channels, he calls it, that all the United States would have to do is stop supplying weapons and support to Ukraine, and this thing would be over within weeks. He says he's offered to come to the table, but the other side doesn't want to come to the table, is what he's saying. He says, we've done a lot of talking. That's what he claims. I thought that was very interesting as well. Tucker asks him about, would you ever see a time where you would invade Poland? And because that's a big fear now for NATO. And he said, and he kind of laughed it off. He goes, no, I mean, why? He said, the only way we would invade Poland is if they attack us first. He said, we have no interest in going into Poland. That's what he keeps saying. He says the United States is the epitome, is the number one propaganda machine out there. He's probably right on that. He says, the United States, your leaders, your elites keep your citizenry in fear of the boogeyman Russia, that we're going to do all this stuff. We're going to invade everybody and go all the way through Europe. He says that's a lie. He keeps saying that's not the case. He said, we keep nuclear weapons. We keep, just like you do, we have the hypersonic missile technology and missiles as a deterrent, as countermeasures to what you guys are doing too. So he says that the leadership here is extorting from the citizens through taxes and as far as this Ukraine war, all the money and the support that sending Ukraine, and your citizens need help. Your economy is struggling. So he's like, this is dumb. He's basically saying that your leadership is stupid and making dumb decisions and is self-inflicted and is shooting itself in the foot at the expense of the American people. So that's interesting. He asked them about China as far as the relationship with China and cozying up to them. And he's like, well, we've shared a border with China for how many years? Says, I think it makes good sense to be a good partner if as much as possible with your neighbor, with your next door neighbor. And our trade is very even, it's very equal both ways. So, yeah, he was talking about that. And he was saying no matter who's president. Now he was talking about different presidents, and he said that he did like and had a fondness for W. Bush and Trump, that they got along well, that it sounded like he had a lot more respect for them than he did ones like Trump, Obama, and Biden. So and it kind of makes sense actually. He said that there again, though, Tucker was like, well, if we have a new regime comes in, a new president comes in 2024 for the United States, does that change your outlook? And he says, possibly, but probably not, because your power base, no matter who's president, he doesn't see a big change not anytime soon in the strategy of the United States. He said that using the dollar to and using sanctions against Russia was also a strategic mistake, and is ending up hurting the economy of the United States. And we're still strong, and we're getting stronger. We're partnering with China more. So he said that was a bad decision. Um, Again, he's talking about the power bases, and Tucker asked him, well, who is in power if the president's not in power of the United States? Who do you think? What do you think about that? And he's didn't get real specific. He did refer sometimes to the CIA, the FBI, other agencies, the intelligence agencies. He did kind of allude to the elites, so a power base that's in the shadows, that's kind of really running things. Got a good point there again. And again, he goes back to, the breakup of the Soviet Union back in 1991. There was a promise that that NATO would not keep expanding, and they keep breaking that promise. So what are we supposed to do here? We're not the aggressors. You guys are the aggressors. You guys are the one making bad decisions. Your leadership, and he lays it all out there, y'all. He talks about Russia. He says we have freedom of religion here. We have people from all ethnic, backgrounds, religions here. They can practice their religion. Um, we have we have traditional values here. We're about family. Goes into that some, and then he's asked about artificial intelligence, and he it's interesting. He talks about Putin. He talks about Elon Musk. He says there's no stopping this guy. He's going to go through with this thing, like the brain implants and all that kind of stuff. He said, but I think we're going to have to come to a point, human leadership, humans are going to have to come to a point to where we put some kind of restriction or put some kind of rules in place, because this is going to become a threat to humanity, which makes sense. Um, and he also says if the United States does send troops, and he says there are mercenaries from the United States, UK already fighting. He knows about that. That's fighting in Ukraine. He said, but if the United States officially steps in and sends troops in in big numbers and all that, he says again that will be a terrible mistake for you guys. That would bring us to that would be an escalation that would bring the world to the brink of destruction, to destruction. So he's basically saying there, man, you send in your army, and we will escalate to de-escalate. We will escalate to the max there. So he puts it in there. He puts it, very firm there. And then he's like, well, why do you got, he's like you have nothing better to do. You have your own issues. You have your own problems. You have these bases everywhere in the world. He says you got a $33 trillion debt. You got the economy. You got social issues. You got political, all this stuff. He says you got enough issues on your own. Why are you meddling over everywhere else? Good point. He's asked about the Nord Stream pipeline, and he's in so many words, says that he believes the CIA was behind that with the help of probably some European allies. He says you have to look at who's capable of doing that, who's capable of going down to the bottom of the ocean and cutting something like that. Hello, not just any Joe. Um, talk about again. He's talking about the CIA there, masters of propaganda is what he's calling it too. Talks a lot about economics. You know, he says you guys won't stop printing cash. You won't stop printing dollars over there. Again, you're hurting your own people here. And then Tucker asks him about his religion, and he's claiming he's Christian, Orthodox Christian, and all this. And so that's kind of interesting. And again, talks a little bit more about China. I made some other notes, so bear with me here. Um, but basically, that's the big points that I got from it, is that he's basically saying your leadership or whoever is really in charge is making mistakes. They're hurting the citizenry, and you know, we have to talk, we have to solve these things. And he's said that there's been several times where he's offered to work together with NATO on things like the missile defense system, like what was the other thing? Joining NATO and doing other things, and he keeps getting rejected. So he keeps saying that stuff, saying that over and over again too. And he goes into a lot of detail about this stuff. I do recommend that you watch the, if you haven't yet, I know probably a lot of you have, but if you haven't, go ahead and watch the interview. It is over 2 hours, just a little over 2 hours. Break it up. I mean, like I did, I watched kind of in 30-minute segments, 15 to 30-minute segments, and just made notes because I wanted to do a video about it, of course. But I think it is worth listening to all of it. Because you're hearing from the other side, and I think that was a big risk for Tucker. I think Tucker did a good job. I think he asked him the hard questions. I think he asked him the questions that most of us would ask. I don't think he threw him softballs. I don't think he was catering to him in any way, really. So I think that was fair. Um, I think you should watch it and then, use your critical thinking skills. Is he lying about some stuff? I don't know. Probably so, but I think that's up for each individual to decide. Don't let the media, the mainstream media, tell you what to think. Use your own judgment. Think for yourself is my message. You know. All right, and I made a screenshot of some of the comments of the video that I watched, of the interview. And one guy said, it's interesting. He said, Putin just spent 28 minutes going through the this is at the beginning of the interview, the years of Eastern European history without a single note in his hand. He had no paper in his hand. This guy was talking from the brain. With a single note in his hand, Biden has no idea what he had for lunch. This is a terrifying thought. Good point. And another comment, whether I believe Putin is another matter. But the main thing is that I can watch an unedited version and make my own mind up rather than being told what to think. Amen. That's the bottom line right there. That's it. All right. So I'm gonna go do a verse. Share what you think. Share your thoughts. Share, if you've watched this already, what do you think about it? Was there anything that really, what were the things that really stood out for you? Was there a moment where you were like, oh my goodness, share that, if you will, in the comments. All right, I have a verse. This is from Psalm 119, chapter 119, verse 105. It says, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Amen. This is from the devotion. It says, guide me, O thou great Jehovah, as a pilgrimage in this sometimes dark land. Grant me, please, just the light that I need. Amen. Amen. Let's stay in the Word, y'all. As I've said before, and as Stephen says, keep close to Jesus. Let's stay safe out there. God bless you. I'll see you soon.